What's up, y'all? Second video today, and today we'll be talking about Strongman nutrition. Order of today we'll talk about like micronutrients, vitamins and minerals, go into like hydration because that's the big deal and something I see a lot of people don't do properly, and then go to macros, which I know is what everyone thinks is like the main thing, which is very important, and then obviously calories and how to set that up and how they may look through different phases of the year, because we're not going to be on the same diet all year and expect to see results. We can be on the same style of foods, but we're not gonna be on the same macros all year round and look better by the end of the year. That won't happen. There's gonna have to be some changes to make sure we stay sensitive from an insulin perspective, but also don't get fat as crap, because that sucks, and we don't want to be fat, y'all. So macros first. So number one, we want to make sure we're hitting all our micronutrients, so all our vitamin E, all our vitamin D3, every little micro. Now, I know y'all heard of apps like MyFitnessPal, Chronometer. I would definitely download one of those. I think Chronometer has the ones closest in the micronutrient range to what I consider the range, but I definitely would get that, put all your food on there and see what you're missing. It'll tell you. Now, I will say some foods miss the micros, mean they have no data enlisted on it. Make sure you like look at that, so you're like, okay, I'm not getting enough potassium, let me make sure all my food have the correct amount of potassium, because that's someone before they put yellow potatoes on there and instead it had no potassium. Obviously potatoes do, so I was like, well, you are getting enough potassium, but just make sure you guys don't have any that have no data filled in on it. But make sure you get all the micros. It's pretty easy, and the only way for your mitochondria to work effectively and for you to produce enough ATP to do all these lifts we're doing, you're gonna need to get enough micros. It's gonna help your sleep, gonna help your mood, it's gonna help your body just work, gonna burn fat more effectively. And that's where like the calories in, calories out isn't exactly right, because a calorie without proper micros will definitely respond differently to the same amount of calories compared to someone who's getting enough. Anyway, so sources, so like for potassium, some popular sources would be potatoes. It's in a lot of vegetables and fruit, obviously, but potatoes are really packed. I try to include potatoes once a day for the potassium for most people. Not everyone likes potatoes, and some people don't digest sweet potato very well. I see in the off season though, when you're trying to eat a lot of food, potatoes can be hard because of the fiber. But that's where something like no salt, which is a salt substitute, we need sodium, and we'll go over that in a little bit, but potassium salt is a really easy way to add potassium in, potassium chloride, which most sweat is mostly chloride, so we do need that as well. But yeah, but potassium, we can add this to our food. It's calorie free. It's a very easy way. Obviously, I am bigger on the food, but obviously sometimes that's just not what's best for us. Sometimes we can't eat the stuff that has more potassium because we have to keep our fiber low because we're eating so much. Different things like that. We may just not like a food, which is don't eat stuff you don't like. I mean, if you can withstand it, that's different, but if you just don't like it, don't eat it. There's no point. So that's where stuff like this comes in handy. If we do have extra extra calories carb wise, and we can have a little bit more sugar and is intra-workout, something like this will work really well. A ton of potassium, and on my high carb days with a lot of my athletes, they'll drink this in between meals to kind of mimic what happens when we have a refeed, because this is all Strongman setting based. So when we have the refeed, we got to make sure we get enough electrolytes, everything like that, enough water, and we really don't want any wasted space, meaning we don't want to be drinking a bunch of water all day, which we will have to, especially if we're not getting an IV or not much IVs. We really don't want to waste any space. So anytime we're drinking water, like something with calories, with potassium and calories, maybe a little bit of salt for some people, works really well. So this can come in handy, and it's really good in that peri-workout spot as well, just because of the sugar, a little bit quicker. Now, other micros like vitamin E, now I don't have them up here, but sunflower seeds. I have shrimp right here, and these are some of my meals I cooked. I'll go over that in a second. But stuff like that's high in vitamin E, trout's high in vitamin E, salmon. But we want to make sure we get vitamin E in our diet. I see that's very common nutrient that people don't get enough of. And I would actually supplement it. That's kind of where I'm leaning with that. I would definitely take a supplement. It's really hard to get enough vitamin E. If you are getting enough vitamin E, you're probably right there at the top end of the range, 15 milligrams a day. So adding something like that in daily could just give you like a background, just making sure you get enough. We do definitely want to like stay away from taking all these supplements, but if we can eat it, then that's dope. But a lot of times vitamin E cannot. Now, two that I definitely would get in supplement form would be magnesium, and I would get the glycinate version because it will cross the blood-brain barrier, so help with sleep, help with cortisol levels, and help you stay a little bit more parasympathetic, more relaxed during the day. Really good before bed, really good with meals too, helps ATP production, energy production, and electrolyte. It's really hard to get in the diet, and we definitely want more, especially people who sweat a lot, who are very adrenally, like they're working out often, and they're really stressed throughout the day, and they're very go, go, go. This is something that can really calm you down too. I recommend everyone get this, whether you're a strongman athlete or not. Same thing with all these macronutrients, all the vitamins and minerals, everyone should get them in. Another one would be vitamin D3, somewhere right here. It's really hard to get a vitamin D3. We all know that. I would recommend 5,000 units if you're in the sun often, 10,000 if you're not. I get 10,000. And there's not really many studies or any studies to really prove like 10,000 units is gonna hurt you. And make sure we get these vitamins in with food with fat in it. Just because a lot of these are fat soluble. If you take some of these on an empty stomach, it's not gonna feel very good. So definitely get them in with actual meals. Vitamin C, antioxidant. I would actually supplement with this. I don't get everyone to do this, but definitely something that could just make sure you get enough vitamin C. We do want to eat something like oranges daily or something high in vitamin C, bell pepper. So make sure you're hitting that on your Cronometer or MyFitnessPal. But adding a little bit extra. Now I would do ester C because it's the bioavailability, how much you actually use is really good. But I definitely would get the ester C version in like one pill. I even have some people who have a lot of oxidative stress take it every meal, which is 5-6 times a day. Not needed, but it is recommended specifically for strongmen on that one. But definitely not a bad thing for anyone to take. More stuff that's not really strongman directly, but zinc. Now red meat's high in zinc. There's a lot of foods, but it really is important for mitochondrial function like we're talking about and sleep. So I just recommend to get zinc picolinate. This one's 50 milligrams. One pill at night, it's good. Like I said, you may get that in the diet some days and not in the others, but it's good just as like a background. Just make sure you do get enough. Pro-prebiotic, postbiotic. I would recommend that for everybody. And I would also incorporate foods that include post-prebiotics. Ripe bananas are good on prebiotics. And if you're taking a fiber supplement or eating adequate fiber, you're probably getting enough of the prebiotic. But probiotics like kimchi, sauerkraut, Greek yogurt's really good, and you get your protein and calcium in. So you're getting multiple, you're gonna get that macro and all the micros too with the calcium and help your gut out, So we do need to feed the good bacteria in our gut. That's the main reason for that. And I know there's a lot of supplements and it's really hard to quantify what you need and what you don't need. So like y'all just need to like put in the Cronometer, see what you're missing. If paying for this stuff's an issue, that's fine. Just slowly like find cheaper ways to get it. Like let's say you can eat sunflower seeds and get your vitamin E and it's cheaper. Do that then, okay? Now going down the line, now this is a little bit more, this is fat loss specific and strongman specific. Now if you're taking any glucose uptake drugs like ATP, DATA, Modronate, almost forgot it. I would not take this. You may cause a little bit of dysfunction in mitochondria, or we don't really sure what's gonna happen. I wouldn't do those. A little bit of contradictory responses. Carnitine attaches to a free-form fatty acid and then it's burned and then you breathe it out after you burn it, or at least breathe most of it out. Now this will just make sure you have enough adequate amount of carnitine in your body, just so like any fat that is in the bloodstream ready to be used, you have something to attach to that fat to burn for energy. You will find your endurance is better and you will find you will burn fat more effectively. Now if you are adequate in carnitine storages, which as we cut we're going to go lower in carnitine storages typically, and we can find it in our food, but if you're cutting I definitely would add it in, and it can help a little bit with insulin sensitivity, but that's just because it's taking those free-form fatty acids out of the bloodstream, which allow your pancreas to work a little bit more effectively. Just contradictory responses. So I would take that, especially if you're taking something that increases fatty acid oxidation, like cardarine. Cardarine actually works through increasing carnitine synthesis, so I would take that for this. All right, but definitely very good. Take a little bit more before and after your cardio sessions and your training. Can definitely help with your endurance. Strongman specific, sodium bicarbonate, carbs and potassium, but also it will help with lactic acid while training. I would take this right before you train, like right before, and take it away from food. It will cause bloating, kind of like burping, stuff like that. So make sure you keep it away from meals. This will produce an alkaline environment, and most of the time we're eating proteins and fats, we do need an acidic environment. All right, y'all. Now moving down the line, beta-alanine, more to do with lactic acid, will improve endurance. I would take 6 grams of that a day if you are a strongman, which sounds like a lot, and that's every day, whether you train or not. I would take it around training if you can. Creatine, strongman, shot put, Olympic weightlifting, these very explosive power-based sports, we burn through creatine a lot. Now, well, we're gonna go over energy systems, but the first energy system is creatine phosphate. So I would take, for my woman, I do 5 to 10 grams a day if they're a strong woman. And for my strong men, I do 10 to 20, which sounds like a lot. 20 is more on those high carb days or the days before when we're loading up for a big session. That may require a lot of creatine, especially stuff if they're like an athlete who's very fast, does a lot of jerks, more explosive style lifter, they actually may require more creatine. Myself, I kind of fit into that category, so I'm more like 20 grams a day, but I do fluctuate to put on what I'm doing that day, what I'm eating that day, everything like that. This is probably #1 for energy production in strongman. I definitely would recommend taking this. Just some little stuff. We got taurine, which I'm not gonna go into that, but hydration, antioxidant, really good. I just dropped my apple cider vinegar. But if you guys are getting acid reflux caused from glucose, and then you could take an apple cider vinegar, it will help that before meals. If you're getting acid reflux from protein and fats, and it's from low acidity, which is a reason, but we'll go into that later. Another video, I'll take it before your meals to make sure you're digesting your meals, have enough acidity in your stomach. Just because you can't really use something you don't digest well, and we'll go over that with the protein. But if you're having a hard time digest protein, betaine HCl with pepsin right here, and Nutricost is the brand I would recommend. And then apple cider vinegar if it's more of a glucose thing, or you just want to keep your blood sugar a little bit down. But and be careful with it. If you do it and you find your acid reflux worse, then it's definitely not the one for you. Just try it out. It's really like, just try it. If it works, then it works. Sodium, now this is very misinterpreted, and it's going to kind of segue us a little bit more into, let me make sure I didn't forget anything. Also, digestive enzymes. You can do digestive enzymes before your meals just to make sure you have enough enzymes. Now, I would mainly do this like when you are eating a meal you haven't ate before, or something that's a little bit more foreign to your diet, especially if you're like cutting, it's like your first cheat meal in a while. I definitely would implement it then, or in the off season you're just having a hard time eating. But definitely have something good to have on hand just in case. And I would get, this one's Doctor's Best. It's the one that has the highest amount of each one. And it is third-party tested. So I would get this one. You can find an individual brand. Just make sure you compare them, look at the reviews, and then look at like input from people who are experienced in that area, because they'll be able to point you the right direction. But yeah, that can help too if you're having stomach issues. Now into hydration. Now sodium, main thing with hydration, especially with strongmen. Most strongmen are really fat, ugly too. So they sweat a lot. They don't sweat because they're ugly, they just sweat because they're fat. But they gotta do running and stuff. And they sweat a ton throughout the day. And I don't know, like me, I sweat all day long. I'm not sweating right now for some reason. But last video I was sweating the whole time, and I sweat mostly all day, every day. So I would implement some kind of sodium though. Now a lot of people try to stay away from sodium because it kind of has a bad reputation, I guess you could say. Now for people who are sodium sensitive, it can increase your blood pressure, but that's in excess amounts. Now, if you're getting less than a gram of sodium a day, that's too little. I usually recommend 3 to 5. Now, people who sweat a lot more, like myself and most of my strongmen, they typically get like more like 7 to 10. And it could change on the day. Now, typically, I will say that I will add more sodium on high carb days just because they require more. Same thing with potassium. And as long as potassium is at a reasonable number compared to the sodium, blood pressure typically won't go up. As long as water is there, potassium there, magnesium's there, and sodium's there, the blood pressure typically stays okay. But keep an eye on your blood pressure. If you increase the sodium and you find blood pressure go up, then you know you're sodium sensitive. Now, water intake wise, now if you're drinking like a cup of water a day, definitely don't up your sodium. Up your water first, then up your sodium. Now, water intake wise, now most females typically around 3/4 of a gallon, maybe up to a gallon. But most males around a gallon, some a gallon and a half, some 2. I'm more of a 2 guy, but I sweat all day. I'm a trainer. I train multiple times a day, so that would be a case where I would be someone who would require more of these things. Now potassium, now that would really like fluctuate hardcore, a lot more than the sodium would. According to carb intake, we do need potassium to use carbs properly. So when you raise your carbs up or is around your training session, that would be a good time to implement more potassium. That's one reason the coconut waters are good around training. I'll take the no salt during post training a lot of times. Right now I've got it every meal, but that's just because of what I'm doing with my diet. But you can implement potassium around the training and those high carb meals. It will make sure you use those carbs more properly. And especially after the refeed, I definitely would really get down with a lot of potassium. Be careful, you can't have too much obviously and have a heart attack, but in most cases, if you're eating a lot of carbs, that won't happen, but it can. So just be wary, especially using like the no salt. Just be careful adding too much of it. Like go up slow. If you have a blood sugar monitor, which I would recommend, test in the morning, see how it changes with the increases of potassium or decreases of sodium or increase of sodium, whatever you're doing to hit these guidelines of setting. Potassium wise, definitely minimum 5 grams a day. If you're 200 pounds and you're eating 500 grams of carbs a day, you definitely should be around 10 grams of potassium, I would say, give or take. We could just say 8 to 12, but definitely in that ballpark. It just makes sure your body's working effectively and using those carbs properly. One more would be fish oil pills. Now, men require more DHA than EPA, women are reversed, so I typically get a DHA one for men. EPA one for women. Micronutrients is a brand I would recommend. And this is the extra strength one. I take one each meal. I also eat trout at night, but I really want to make sure that like all of my fatty acids, omega-3 is the highest one, and polyunsaturated is also the highest out of polyunsaturated, monounsaturated, and this saturated fats as well. So I try to make sure my polys and especially my omega-3 is the highest. I take one every meal. You may get digestion issues from this. If that's you, then you can dial back, but I would recommend one every meal. Make sure you have fat in the meal because you will get a gnarly tummy ache. All right. Anywho, into the macros. Now, we'll go over the big one first, protein. Big topic, and this is like the first thing people ask me. So we have right here, we got shrimp. Now, I do like a variance of protein sources, mainly just for, you want a varied amino acid profile. Now, if you can't do that and it's easier just to cook one for the whole week and be done, that's fine. But it would be better though to have variants, just so you know. What's best doesn't mean it's best for you. So if that's not in your cards, like if you have kids, you got a hard job, and you really just got to cook it all on Sunday for the whole week, because that's just how it is. You know what I mean? Most of the time, even the best athletes in the world aren't able to actually like 100% optimized. You know what I mean? The only person I heard do that was pretty much Eddie Hall, but I could argue he wasn't optimized, just like, you know, all the bull crap he ate. but yeah, so you know what I mean? Just because what's best doesn't mean it's best for you. So if I say this is the best way to do things, doesn't mean like you should do that, and that's the only thing you can do. So anywho, variance is better, but if you can't do that, that's fine. Right here, I got variance because I can. I got shrimp right here. I got tuna, and I got steak, and sometimes I eat chicken. I hate chicken though from eating that for some years, but I have good variants. Now, protein powders are absolutely okay for protein. I wouldn't do all meals though. In order for your body to utilize protein effectively, going back to the macros and minerals, we do need those. So don't rely on protein. I would do 2 meals max, I would say, no matter how many meals you're eating, and we'll go over that. But yeah, but variance is good, and then protein powders are fine. And most protein sources work. I also got Greek yogurt right here, good source of calcium too, but most will work. But what makes a protein source, it being an animal product, it has to be complete protein. Now, if y'all are vegan or vegetarian, that sucks. It's gonna be hard to be a strongman being vegan or vegetarian. Now, if you're doing it for religious reasons or health reasons, if you think it's healthier, that's fine. But just being honest, now, when it comes to protein sources for vegans, vegetarians, you will have to make sure, one thing, vegan, vegetarian protein powders, but make sure you make complete proteins with your carb selections and fat selections. Like rice may have a few of the amino acids, and like beans, for example, has missing ones, and they go together to make a complete protein. You'd have to do stuff like that. So like beans and rice would be an example. Anywho, protein intake. Now, I guess you could say I'm a higher protein guy. What I'm about to say though, if you're barely eating protein, you're going to have to work up to that extremely slowly. Protein's the hardest one to digest in our body, so we can't just jump up a ton. We're gonna get a lot of digestion distress, and we don't want any of that. So we don't want any stomach issues though. So make sure that you just like inch up to my standards I set though. It does vary though, and I do go off of lean body mass because I got some fat clients. If I went off their total body weight, they'd be eating way too much protein. So I typically but I want people to be at 1.5 times their lean body mass in grams of protein. So if I have a 200-pound male, that would mean 300 grams of protein. Now that's with a normal diet in a maintenance phase where they're not trying to gain or lose weight, trying to hold their weight right there. Carbs are probably gonna be higher than that. And fat, and we'll go over that, but typically 40 to 60. Now, if I were to lower those carbs, I would actually raise the protein. Now, the reason for that, carbs and fats are protein sparing, so they make your body utilize that protein better. Now, the way we gotta look at protein and how it works in muscle growth is, think about we have amino acid pool, and whenever our body's ready to build muscle, it will pull amino acids from that pool. Now, our pool's only so big, so if we're eating a ton of protein, more than our pool can hold, it's just gonna go out, it's gonna turn the carb through gluconeogenesis, which is like expensive carbohydrates. Expensive, and means how much volume versus how many carbs you're getting, so just a waste. And we don't want that, but look at carbs and fat. Mainly carbs is a way to expand your pool. So let's say you're eating 400 grams of protein, your body can only really hold 300 right then. These are just random numbers, y'all. Let's say I lower that protein to 350, and I up my carbs by that much, or maybe even more. I could even elevate that pool to 350. Now my pool's bigger, and I have enough amino acid to fill that pool. And if you add in special drugs, and then that can expand that pool as well. But yeah, so that's one way to look at it. So like more protein is very first level thinking. Like we gotta think about other macros. But going back to that, whenever you're in the off season or anything, that would actually be a time to lower direct protein sources and make more room for carbohydrates. When you're cutting and carbs have to come down, you may raise the protein just to make sure you don't lose any tissue. Now that will fluctuate throughout the year because our carbs will fluctuate throughout the year. And you can try different things. You know, I have brought someone 200 up the lean body mass up to 400 protein. I will try that with people. It doesn't always work. It mostly doesn't work. That's a lot of protein. That's twice your lean body mass. My opinion, too much most of the time. But yeah, so we can try different things because Timmy's different from Steve. Timmy may need 200 and Steve may 400, but they may be the same weight. So really just try things for you. Moving over the fats. Now fats that typically keep 40 to 60 across the board. Men, women, I find women need more fat relative to the rest of their diet at a higher percentage of their calories. And I find men don't need as much. Now everyone's different though. So I've had women I've had at 60 and those too little. I've had men I had at 60 and only needed 40. It's going to be something you're going to need to play around with. And it's going to be something that, like, let's say you go down to 40 and you feel good after 2 weeks. You may feel bad after 4 weeks. You know, it's something that may catch up on you. Knowing that, we can introduce it for a certain time frame. Once we kind of get this database for you and your body. Okay, 2 weeks at 40 fat, like Steve feels dope. When he gets to week 4, he feels god-awful. So we know that he doesn't have enough fat for hormonal production, a lot of endogenous production our body has. So we know he needs a little bit more. Now, if your diet, let's say 40 to 60 grams of fat, not all fat's the same. So if it's all saturated fat, you're not gonna have enough for hormonal function. You gotta include fish, you gotta include nuts and seeds and healthy oils. You gotta include a lot of omega-3, like fish oil. Omega-3 should be the most out of all your fatty acids, and polyunsaturated, which polyunsaturated are like omega-3, omega-6, omega-9. Those should be the highest of monounsaturated, polyunsaturated, and saturated. Saturated should be the lowest. It's not terrible for you. We're gonna get some red meat, saturated fat. I take the bullet with the saturated fat for the micros, but like 10 grams saturated fat, that's what I get a day. That's not gonna do anything to me. That's an absolutely healthy amount. So yeah, so know the type of fat you're getting in and your selections. Now moving on the carbs, so this is the main one for Strongman, and this is the one that will fluctuate through the year. Most of the time through the year, fat's exactly the same for most people, especially if they're enhanced. Now, the main thing that will change is carbs. So let's say they want to lose weight, that would be the main thing that goes down. If they want to gain weight, that would be the main thing that goes up. When the food's lower and the carbs are lower, I will pick more fibrous carbs like oatmeal, potatoes, sweet potatoes, quinoa, stuff like that that has a little bit more fiber because it will slow the transit time for the food. And fiber also too, a little backtrack. That's something that can go up and down with the carb intake. If you're eating too many carbs that you can't digest it all, you may have to lower the fiber. If you're eating too little, you may need to up the fiber, and that's the way to control appetite. So that's something that kind of goes with the carbohydrate. I mean, if you're eating 1,000 grams of carbs, good luck eating 50 grams of fiber. It's gonna be really hard. Allow that to fluctuate with the different parts of the year. Around season time, I really want carbs around training sessions, especially in our peak. But the whole goal of the diet before the peak is to make it where I give you this diet on the peak with a bunch of carbs, a bunch of electrolytes. You respond better to it. So you can't hammer carbs year round. You'll become desensitized to it. Off season, I do implement carb cycling. This is more about the setup of it. They can have a lot of carbs maybe on one day in the week, and the rest of the days of weeks are about depleting their glucose storages. That's a good way to, one thing, to keep your metabolism up in a way, help mental fatigue during prep. I see people last a lot longer during the prep. Not only metabolically, their body does respond better, but mentally too. They just feel better. They have that to look forward to. We can do the high carb days in the off season in order to lose weight, but not lose a tissue. Now, there will be times where you can't have a high carb day, especially if you're very large. And I do recommend everyone get just really, really lean, like shredded, like bodybuilding lean at least once. Your body will respond better forever. But if you do get to that point, you may not be able to include a high carb day, sadly. But it's something to implement in the off season just to make sure we're not getting weak. We want to make sure we still have glucose because that's most of our activity. When we get in season, you should have adequate carbs around training session. Now, if you are cutting to a show, that's another thing, but you really need to focus carbs around training, and maybe all your carbs are around training and you have no carbs outside of it, just to make sure you're keeping strength up. Because if you're cutting all the way down to a show and then you're going to do a water cut, the likelihood you lose strength is really high. So we got to make sure we implement those things and maintain our strength. Is it possible to recomp is all the question I get. Now, some people respond to carb cycling very well, which is some days high carb, some days low carb. That is a good way to recomp. It doesn't always work. There's a lot of formats for that. You could do 1 to 3 high carb days a week, and then the rest could be low carb days. You could do low, medium, high. There's no correct way to do it, but the main thing is when you see a new low on the scale, you see a new one every week. You are trending in the right way, and that's the main way to get progression. You want to weigh yourself fast in the morning after you go to the restroom, just to make sure it's a true weight before you eat and drink anything, and just catch your trends. You know what I mean? Make sure you're progressing, because a lot of people are like, I'm not getting weight. And I'm like, well, how many calories you get? And they're like, I don't know. Well, you should weigh your food. You should weigh yourself. All of these things should be tracked just to make sure you're progressing in the right way. Like, I shouldn't ask someone, like, I can't lose weight. Like, when's the last time you weighed yourself? Like, a month? I'm like, how do you know you're not losing weight? You know? So you want to track our metrics to adjust. You want to track your steps. You want to track your cardio. You want to track your movements, just like you track your workouts. We have all these things to track: calories, macros, micros. Track them all, and if you're not hitting your goals, you can adjust. A lot of the stuff that people hire coaches for, they can just do their own. I don't know, like, a lot of people take the common sense out of like this stuff because they just think they know nothing because they never worked out in their life. But a lot of this does apply to common sense, y'all. Don't be afraid to try different things out. Like I said, fluctuate your carbs. Try straight calories too. You know what I mean? If you've never been on a diet before, I would start with straight calories. Get your body like a baseline. Or you're in a maintenance phase, that would be a good time just to do straight calories. Maybe give your body a break from the fluctuations in body weight. If you carb cycle, you will have higher highs and lower lows. But use different methods in different times of the year. You know what I mean? Just to make sure that like you're your strongest when you're competing, unless you're someone trying to shimmy down to a really lightweight class. But you want to be your strongest when you're competing. You need to cut before Strongman season if you can. Don't wait till Strongman season to cut. I mean, do it in the off season when you're okay to take a strength dip, and it's okay to be weaker sometimes too. Just like in the training, we're not going to max out all year round. We don't need to be eating a ton of food all year just to keep our strength. There's going to be times of the year where fasting may be good for you because your gut's messed up. There's going to be times of the year where you're freaking starving, so it's probably time for you to go up a weight class or for you to gain a little bit of weight. So, I mean, your body will naturally tell you these things, but don't try to get in the same pattern all year round. Don't work out the same days. Don't work out 4 days a week for 10 years straight. You know what I mean? Be willing to change things up and try things out. Another thing on top of that, if it's broke, don't fix it. You know, if you guys are on the diet now and your blood work looks awesome, your training's awesome, you mean you get a lot of sleep, you feel dope, don't change it. You know, don't try to fix something that's not broken. Now, if you hit a plateau and need to progress, then you can start looking to that. And one more thing, like keto, carnivore, I'm not a big fan on diets that like don't have any of this. Limits a little bit different from like just not having something. Diets are gonna look different, so something that fits you doesn't have to be keto, doesn't have to be carnivore, it just has to be your diet. That's it for the video. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Here we go, right there, y'all. All right, thank you.